Good evening. I'm Lenina Rasool and you're watching Open Studio. May is Child Protection Month and we're looking at issues affecting children on various levels. Last week we had some guests in studio to talk about child maintenance, and this week we're going to be focusing on child abuse. We have two guests in studio. It's Yumna Martin from Community Chest and Anele Wando, who's a young community activist in the Kraaifontein area. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so Yumna and Anele, obviously we're talking about sort of the child protection space in a broad way, looking at, we know that last year there was a huge outcry around the high rate of child murders in the Western Cape. And part of that outcry was a call for a commission of inquiry into child murders, which, Yumna, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was rejected by the Premier. However, there was talk of a child commissioner being appointed. So tonight we want to sort of unpack that a little bit, look at the child commissioner, the issue of it, and maybe you can give us just a little bit of history around what the child commissioner would do, where we are now in that process, and how Community Chest and the collaborative child protection agencies have been addressing this.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for having me. So yeah, Community Chest primarily works in all sectors across community development, education, health. So of course children goes across to the work that we actually do. And you mentioned earlier the high rates of child murders in the Western Cape, and of course that was a big uproar in our communities very close to all of our hearts, I think. And we as Community Chest, of course, our social media was playing on it, newspapers, our local newspapers, and communities were saying, what can we do? How do we address this? What do we do? And our reality is that we have organizations working and we don't speak together. So I think as part of our community development focus area, we play a very important role in facilitating getting organizations together, civil society together, government departments, academia. And that's how the CPC, the Child Protection Collaborative, actually happened. So in June 2017, we had a big meeting. It was a call out to all our organizations, our networks. It went across, there was about more than 150 people that actually attended it. It happened at the St. George's Cathedral. And it was literally a get-together of where are we all at? What are we going to do about this? And so the Child Protection Collaborative, actually, that was the establishment of it. Organizations that were keen to work together and looking at integrating services and how can we work towards making our communities a safer place for children. So that's the kind of history around it, and Community Chest was part of the support work around that financially, as well as supporting in terms of sustainability and governance with regards to the operational aspects of it. So they're independent. They're an organization that consists of many other organizations working from ECD level, youth, going right through until youth age group, because it starts at ECD level. We need to start looking at the process of a child's development, that it's not only one area that we need to focus on, but across the realm of a child's development in terms of their protection on all levels.
Okay. And then I want to come to you. You live in Kraaifontein. And as an activist, what you've been seeing in this area, and I know engaging with departments within this area, is looking at sort of rates of child abuse on a very personal level, because this is your community.
Yes.
Could you briefly discuss what are some of the major issues that, and challenges and just dangers actually that the children are facing that you see and that you want addressed?
Okay, thank you so much for having me, Lenina. So basically, I am working at the Kraaifontein police station. I'm a volunteer, basically. I decided to do the work to also, empower myself as well. So I started there in 2014, but I was in Joburg, then I came back. And then when I came back, I was called in, and then I was showed the statistics of crime, basically, in general. And so it's so bad, so bad that the cops, they actually pick kids as young as 3 years old at 2 o'clock in the morning. So you can imagine. So Kraaifontein is Wallaston. I am in Wallaston at the moment because I'm busy with your situation analysis, because I need to know exactly what I'm talking about. I cannot be out here talking about things that I'm not experiencing. So much that if you know me, I've lost so much weight because I'm dealing with stats, and it's not me just dealing with stats on paper, but I'm seeing these things. You know what I mean? So it's very bad. Wellesdene is a community that there's a lot of substance abuse. So much that I remember we had a meeting with Distel because we want to bring them on board. We had a meeting with Distel. We actually want to go to the alcohol houses to say, do you understand what alcohol is doing to the communities? Because I remember, and I don't want to make this long, but I remember when SAP wanted me to be part of this #Be a Mentor thing, I actually refused, because for me, as long as the SAP truck drives inside Wellesdene, there is no difference, you know, because kids, they drink alcohol as young as 12 years old. So that's when I decided, you know what, let me take an initiative, you know, and start, and I know she just mentioned something about early childhood development, and that's where I'm at right now, because I've been an activist for about 12 years now, from Love Life and Equal Education and all these organizations. And then I remember I was here last year talking about, you know, donating school bags and all of that. But then I went back to the drawing board, and I realized, you know, for me to, you know, to make change, like holistic change, I need to focus on kids. And so much that now we have kids as your 2000 generation, and they're getting pregnant and they're having babies, you know, and I feel like as these generations, we are failing them every day. So I need to, you know, jump in and come on board. But what's happening at the moment is that there's a lot of rape cases that are happening at the Kraaifontein police station. There's a lot, and when I say there's a lot, that is an understatement, you know. I remember last week I was told that the number went up by 30. You know, so, and this is a small community. Kraaifontein is big, but there's different communities. So Wellesdene, you know what I mean? And if you can go there, you will understand how this happens, you know. I remember recently, like this weekend, there was a lady who just walked around 1 o'clock in the morning. She didn't even know where she was going, and she was drunk. So you will understand how these things happen, because the police station is saying that these incidents happen when they're coming from drinking or at the places where they drink. You know what I mean? But there's also a case where your boyfriends and the fathers are raping their kids, you know, and you'll find that on that street, a lot of people, they know about what's going on in that house, but it's hush-hush, no one wants to talk about it. And that's why it's dangerous, because we're seeing kids acting in a particular way on the street, and we point fingers, not understanding what's happening to kids. You know, so that's why I'm saying, even on the work that I'm doing, because I'm starting off, I want to invest more on home visits, because you can be dealing with a child every day and not know what they're going through at home. You know what I mean?
So I have to interrupt. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll discuss this some more. Welcome back. I'm Lenina Rasool, and you're watching Open Studio. It's Child Protection Month, and we are talking child protection. I've got Yumna Martin here from Community Chest, and Anele Wando, an activist from Kraaifontein. So, and Yumna, sorry, I want to look at basically from an organizational perspective, from a civil society perspective, looking at the issue of child protection. We know that we've got some of the sort of most progressive legislation to protect children. We also know that we have some of the highest rates of abuse. So there's a huge disparity. What is you know, from the engagements that you've had with child protection organizations, what's going on in the middle?
Very good question. I've recently been to Sweden, and we were on a learning visit focused on children's rights. So it was academia that attended, NGOs, as well as big organizations working and focusing on it. So yes, you are correct. We have amazing legislation around our children's rights. I mean, now even the Swedish government, that's one rated as #1 in terms of child protection, in terms of how they engage. And for me, coming back, reflectively looking at it, is that we have the resources, we have services here, but there is no integration. We're not working together. Civil society is not working together with government, working with NGOs. And yes, our communities need it, but if we integrate and work together towards one cause and one purpose, there will be change. And my reflection coming back from is that everyone speaks the same little phrase, and the phrase is literally care of the child. And no matter what they're doing in the sector, whether it's treatment that they're doing, early intervention work, direct early childhood development work, or youth work, their primary core is and their foundation is care of the child. And everything's around that. And they appreciate the other organizations that's focusing on youth because that's not our area. So it's appreciating and working together as organizations. And I think that's what we're struggling with at the moment. There's no networking happening at the moment, not enough networking across our different sectors, not enough integration of services that we can work together to achieve one specific goal, and that's the care of the child. So I would never say that our country is in a mess and in a state in terms of, so there's hectic things happening in our communities, and I come from a community where I see it every single day. But I think we need to sometimes just take a back step as organizations, as civil society, and ask yourself the question. So these issues are there and it overwhelms all of us, but what is my role? And what do I do as an individual to create some sort of change towards the actual change of that child that's in front of us? So I just think, I primarily think that if the integration happens and we start networking and speaking to one another and start valuing each other, we'll create big change with regards to implementation.
Thank you. I mean, that's very insightful. I just want to move over to Anela because, you know, working as a volunteer at SAPS, which is one, let's call it a government entity that deals with these sorts of cases. Child abuse being a sort of criminal case. From a government standpoint, and let's look like government, grassroots government standpoint, you've got some insights into how difficult it is for them to deliver, even if they want to. What are some of the things that you're seeing that are barriers to implementation?
Some people, they don't even understand, you know, the law. Like I remember when you were talking to me and you asked, you know, in a sense where someone loses, you know, the case number, what happens and all of that. And I remember I was talking to one of the detectives and as I was like, and I told him that I've been having conversations with people and I've picked up that people don't really know, except for I go to the police station. And it's not easy for some people, you know, to go and say, I've been raped. You know, especially for young people. And the thing is, then how do we empower, you know, young kids? How do we empower kids? How do we speak to them and say, when this happens, it's wrong, you know? Because I know there's a girl that I know, that I heard about, that she's sleeping with her father on a daily, you know what I mean? So stuff like that, you know, so that's one thing. And secondly, I also know that there's a shortage of detectives. And because I went to ask, what can we do? Because this campaign that we're starting as well, it's not that we want to, you know, tell people, because people know about these things, but we also want to learn to raise funds, to raise funds instead of always, you know, asking. You know, so I asked, what can we do? You know, what can we help? And the lady was like, there's nothing that you guys can do. It's a department. You know, we are in shortage of detectives. And so those are the things. And what you're saying about civil society integrating and working with government, it will be nice to, and I know, that's why I told you, I took time out from civil society. It's been 5 years, 6 years. I took a step back because I felt like the more there's organizations, the more there's legal change, you know, and I've been going on conferences, I've been flying, I've been to Europe. And I feel like, you know, let me just take a step back. And yes, we've been having these roundtables, but how do we really, you know, sit down as civil society and say, how do we help the government? You know, how do we have these conversations? And at the same time, and I want to put this out here, we're not on the space to step on toes, but we're here to say, how can we help?
Yes.
You know, because we're also part of the problem. We might as well be part of the solution. You know, so that's where we're sitting now. But that's what the police station is facing. But more than that, you know, we need more awareness campaigns, especially in Wallerstein. Like, and I'm going to say this bluntly because people know me. They know about me. There's literally nothing happening in Wallerstein, and it's unfair. Like, it's uncalled for. Because now we're voting tomorrow and people are being told to vote. What are we voting for? You know what I mean? What are we really voting for? Because we don't even have a youth resource center. You know, and there's kids who are willing to do things, but where do they go? You know, and we've been trying as well to meet with the mayor at Den Plateau because I spoke briefly with him. You know, so it's too much, man. It's too much, and I feel like every day we are failing kids. We can say young people are like this, but at the end of the day, what is it that we're doing? You know, as either civil society or the government. But something needs to be done, because what is scary is that they're growing. We have kids that are growing up. We have kids who are young as 12 who are having babies. You know, so just imagine. And what is happening as well in Wallaston is that there are a lot of young kids who are using drugs and they're getting pregnant, you know, and so it's too much. And the police or the police station, they can't fight the fight alone, you know, and there's non-existing relationship between the community and the police. So that's where I'm coming in as well to say, you know, how do we have these dialogues in the community so that people understand when this happens, this is what I should do. You know what I mean? So that's where the problem is at the moment.
Thank you, Anele. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back after this. Welcome back. You're watching Open Studio. I'm Lenina and we're chatting Child Protection Month. Yumna, I just want to come back to you. So we know that, we mentioned in the beginning that there was a call for a commission of inquiry in response to the child murders, which we know is still quite high. And we're seeing evidenced actually over the last few months with all of these cases going to trial now, these murder cases. What was done, what was proposed was the appointment of a child commissioner. And this was then put out for comments. I know that the collaborative, the Child Protection Collaborative, you know, responded to that. I just want to unpack a little bit. So what would the so if a child commissioner were appointed, what would this child commissioner do?
So with regards to the Child Commissioner, and I think the comment that went out, and we did a paper too, and a comment to the Western Cape legislation, and it was around that it should be an independent Child Commissioner and not attached to any government department or any other organizations, that this person will have the power and the teeth to actually make decisions around what the best is for the child. So it would be an independent entity and not attached to any sort of, and it would actually be based at Parliament, legislation, and to make decisions from that side as an independent for the best of the child's interest.
And would that be to oversee sort of child protection space?
Yes, with regards to child protection services and issues and cases that's coming up with regards to children's protection.
Okay, I see. And where are we now in this process?
So the submission was done last year, November, and there hasn't been any feedback. So yeah, we were really hoping that we'd have received feedback before election time, but clearly nothing as yet. And I think that's what I spoke to earlier, you know, things take so long, and it was a dying issue, needed to be addressed, and people, the call for comment came out, people addressed it, and now we wait. And you feel so powerless in terms of that. But the collaborative has been doing things, and they've been working on coordination. They're working on Child Protection Week at the moment now, so Community Chest actually funds them. And they're running a special project that's happening on the Saturday of Child Protection Week. And it's actually looking at the vetting of workers attached to early childhood development organizations or working in youth organizations, doing direct work with children. So looking at the sexual offenders list, so to actually vet the staff that's working with them. Because I think we spend so much time on the actual work with the child, but who's the person working with the child, and do we actually know who that person is?
Sorry, can I just ask you, because that's an interesting issue. They are supposed to vet them.
But in reality, it's not happening. So I think as Community Chest, we realize it's part of good governance. If an organization working directly with children, we have this beautiful legislation, but also the staff that's working with these individual children. Have they been vetted properly? And I think we've recently been having the discussions around mental illness and staff. And so if you have a staff member that has a mental illness or has a history of child abuse, how do we actually know? And they go, I could be a social worker, nobody knows anything about me, they're a social worker, and they think I'm deemed as being professional and I'm okay to work with kids. But we don't actually go into the background of that individual. So I think we are realizing that's an actually important part of, we're actually forgetting about who's the people working with our kids.
So that's a very interesting moment. Before I go to Anela, I would just like to ask you, so, you know, we're speaking to citizens, we're speaking to to mothers and aunts and grandmothers and all of these people who look after kids.
Yes.
Right? And we know that, as Anela's pointed out, so many of these people engage with DSD or the police, or when it comes to different forms of child abuse. When you speak about practitioners, how can citizens empower themselves? Should they interrogate the practitioners that they are dealing with within the industry? I mean, you're a social worker, possibly. Are there things that us as citizens engaging with the system can do to around this issue?
I think number one, if I look at in terms of children, your ECDs, are they registered? Number one. So I think as a parent, you need to be very responsible in terms of where you're sending your kids to school. They're supposed to all be registered by the Department of Social Development, which means that they are vetted, they have the governance in place, they have an operational board, they have proper financial management, that their physical space is actually a safe space for the child.
Yeah.
And I think we tend to forget about that. So we go for the cheaper ECD, and we know there's a need out there, and I totally understand that. But we need to be responsible as parents, as caregivers. Where do I actually leave my child during the day when I have to go and work? Because that's a non-negotiable.
And it's even with, even with family members, even with aunts and uncles, even within the community.
Exactly. So for me, I think that's a starting point that we all need to take responsibility around. Kids doesn't have a voice. So as adults, we need to step up and be the voice for the children. And I think importantly around parenting, it starts at home. I always say that as a social worker, I've realized whether the kid is youth, whether they're teenagers, they're going through different things, but it does start at home. It doesn't necessarily have to be parents. It needs to be the caregiver that's looking after that child. And so offering that sort of support to family members that's actually caring, and they play a very important role in our communities. The gogos, the aunties that's at home every single day.
Exactly. Yumnisa, before we finish up, I just want to go to Anele. So you're in a very unique position, volunteering with SAPS, looking at sort of community issues, and you spoke a lot about the community working with SAPS or with government departments, let's say, child protection agencies. How can communities get involved? I mean, within your communication, you're now a volunteer. What can people in communities do?
I think the first thing that we need to do first is to actually have the conversation, because no one wants to talk about rape. You know, I can be in a room full of people, and the moment you mention rape, everyone goes quiet.
And when it's a child, it's even worse.
Yes, so everyone goes quiet. And I think that's what we're busy with at the moment with Activate as well. I'm also now just joined an organization called Itemba Support Group, which I'll be the deputy chairperson. So basically, you know, we're getting there because we've never even had a conversation in Wallaston. You know, all the conversations are happening in other communities, but not in Wallaston. But as well, with Community Chest, we have Community Chest, but the thing is they also say they're understaffed. You know what I mean? So it's a problem, because the thing is, where do you go? Because you find that even the police station now is a place where even if something is a social thing, you have to go to the police station, whereas it doesn't really need the police. You know what I mean? So it's not easy. It's not easy, but we're gonna get there. I need to make a promise on that. We're gonna get there, even if we save 10 children. We cannot not fail all these kids, because right now what's happening, even kids at primary school, they're dropping out of school. So you can imagine what's going on. There's a lot of kids who are, you can go to the community now, there's a lot of kids on the streets.
Anela, I'm sorry, I have to stop you there. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much. It's Yumna Martin from Community Chest and Anela Wanda from Kraaifontein. And that brings us to the end of our show. Have a lovely evening.